Have you ever been driving somewhere unfamiliar and you needed to rely on a map or GPS to get you there? Well, more than likely you used GPS because not very many people use maps to get to their destination these days. I mean, if you did rely on GPS to get you to your destination, did you ask yourself at any point in time, how does this system know where I am, where I'm going, and how to get me there? I too have wondered the same thing multiple times. So today I want to talk to you about what GPS is, how to use GPS, and some advantages and disadvantages of using GPS. So like I asked before, have you ever wondered, how does your phone know how to get you from point A to point B? Well, first let's talk about what GPS actually is. So GPS stands for Global Positioning System. It is a system that relies on 30 plus satellites to shoot signals to receivers in order to give them a precise location. Now, this is a major historical improvement in forms of ways to figure out how to get to where you're going. It started out as, ancient sailors relying on constellations, the stars, things like that to determine, where they were at that time and then how to get to where they needed to go. And then we had maps, which started out as the doodle map drawings, with just the pictures. Then we got a little more descriptive, and now we're on our way to using topographic maps, which tell you everything, but literally nothing at all. So there have been tremendous improvements on how to figure out where you are and where you're going, and now we have GPS, which makes it that much more easier. So the 30 plus satellites that orbit the Earth and shoot signals down to receivers, and those receivers could be anything like your phone, your vehicle, they make GPS trackers for hunting, things like that. And then your phone, whatever, receives it. And I guess the best way that I can kind of describe it, or the best way it made sense to me, was that these satellites, whatever the four closest are, or the four best signals, shoot down to the receiver picks them up, they triangulate the information, and then boom, you have your location. So GPS can be used in many different ways, and there are many types of different GPS. Like mentioned above, you can use your phone, you can use your vehicle, hunting. They make stuff for camping, hiking. There's maritime GPS, all kinds of stuff. But there is some things that, although they are different types of GPS, they all are used practically in the exact same ways. So some ways that GPS are commonly used is by determining latitude and longitude, trying to figure out the shortest route to get you from point A to point B. I guess in hunting, for example, in the Navy, we have a system called the VMS, and it stands for Voyage Management System. And you have one in the bridge, which is where, I guess, let's just say the steering wheel, that's where you go to drive the ship. And then they have one in combat, which is where we have all our raiders and stuff like that. And those two teams themselves are a strong, I want to say entity, but they play a really huge role in maintaining ship's course. And so that voyage management system, it can use waypoints just like GPS, and it relies on signals to figure out where you are, where you're going, how fast you'll get there, so on and so forth. These are just some very basic examples of how to use GPS. Obviously, there are many more. Lastly, I want to talk about how everything has its advantages and its disadvantages. And in this situation itself, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. But I want to talk about the disadvantages first because nobody likes a boring ending. So some of the disadvantages that you will find with using GPS is that the system itself is constantly trying to catch signals from wherever it can. Therefore, it's always running in the background, and that drains the battery rather quickly. So surely, if you're not using it all the time and you have a portable charger or something like that, not a crisis. However, if you are using it constantly and you don't have a backup charger and that is your only form of GPS, it can be kind of detrimental if your GPS dies on you and you're in the middle of nowhere with, you have no idea. And so a second disadvantage to GPS is it can be heavily affected by like walls or big buildings, for example, like skyscrapers, things like that. And then lastly, the system can be kind of touchy when it comes to weather. So if you're in a spot where it's raining, where it's snowing, windy, whatever, the signals sometimes can bounce off that weather, and then it'll have a harder time trying to send and receive the signals to get the information needed. Another thing is that if you have a weak signal, like I know for your phone you need to kind of have like 5G LTE or something like that. So if you don't have any service at all, your phone GPS itself is not going to work. So that can be kind of a disadvantage to using GPS. So now I want to move on to the advantages of using GPS. And the advantages are things like the system does all its own calibrating. So by that, I mean you plug in where you need to go and that's all, that's all the system really needs. Now, mind you, that's probably based on what type of tracker you're using. However, pretty generically, you don't have to do any calibrating on your own. It knows where you are, how to get you to where you're going. And then another thing, all the information is based on real time. So, it's not, well, okay, I was back here 5 miles ago and it starts 5 miles ago. No, it's your precise location, exactly where you are when you turn on the GPS. So like I said, everything has its advantages and disadvantages, but here in this situation, I heavily believe that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. GPS is, like I said, a system of 30 plus satellites that uses signals to send and receive exact locations. There are many ways and many types of GPS that you can use, like I said, for example, your phone for the 100th time, hunting, hiking, camping, etc. And then, like I said, lastly, the advantages do outweigh the disadvantages just because, it can be affected by weather or it can die doesn't mean that it's not worth it or, it's a piece of junk. So I hope that this information has answered the question about how does your phone know where you're going and how to get you to where you're going.